as time goes by, we can become more harsh, more inflexible. And I believe that one of the things that contributes to hard years, hard times, is because we can find ourselves in a place where we are inflexible. We are unwilling to change. We are unwilling to move. And we are bent and stubborn on having things the way that we want to have things within our marriage. Hey everyone, I'm Larry.
And I'm Julia.
Welcome to the Beautifully Blended podcast. Our passion is to help blended families and marriages to find help, hope, and healing. And I'm excited to be here.
Yes. We have a blended family. We've been married for 15 years. And so we've seen some highs and lows. And so we're just really excited to join you on your journey as you're working to blend your family beautifully as well.
Thank you. My wife doesn't feel well.
I don't.
Yeah, so she's powering through.
Yes.
Did you say yes, like with muscles?
Yes.
So she's powering through. I'm glad you are powering through and you are making it work.
Thank you.
I love you.
I love you too.
Okay, good. All right, so today we're going to talk about the hard things. The hardest years in marriage.
Yeah.
Marriage has hard years. Like you can have beautiful years where there's peace and you guys are growing together and connecting. But there are also hard years in marriage, and you need to know what they are, how to identify them, what to do when they arrive.
And there's two different hard times.
Yeah.
Right? There's the ones that happen to you.
Right.
And there's the ones that happen because of you.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to start with the ones that happen to you.
Okay.
All right. And so generally the hardest years are the first 2 years, first 1 or 2 years, because you're still getting acclimated. You're still learning each other. You're still trying to figure things out. And so a lot about you is exposed in that time.
Yeah.
And that's part of what makes it hard.
Tell me more.
Well, part of what's exposed is like, what are your real routines like? Who are you?
Yeah.
What's your real character?
Yeah.
You know, when you're dating and you go your way and I go my way, I don't see the behind the scenes.
Right. You can take the wig off in the car on the way home and no one will ever know.
Right. And so and so it's different.
For
right?
sure.
And so you're learning about each other and you're learning about yourself. And so I would say the first 2 years can be really hard. How well do you cook? You know, are you cooking during dating season from recipes, right? Or like you have like 3 recipes and you nail them.
Right.
During the dating stage.
The person you're dating never sees you look at the recipes.
Right.
They never see you kind of, try to figure out what it's going to look like. They don't see your kitchen while you cook. They just see the finished product.
They don't see you calling a friend, phoning a friend to try to get help with the recipe.
Right.
They just show up and the food is done. And so they think, wow, you know, he or she is a good cook.
It exposes a lot of things.
It does.
They don't know what your junk drawer looks like. They don't. No, seriously. Like they don't know what your junk drawer looks like. There's a before you.
Yeah.
There's a morning version of you and a night version of you.
Yes.
And they may not see the morning version, like when you first wake up, without the stuff on the face. Like they don't see that. So.
Right. Lots of expectations.
Right.
Lots of things that have to change. And so the first reason why I would say, and we kind of alluded to this, is that we are adjusting to new roles and expectations in the marriage in the first 2 years, right? You know, if you're used to doing things a certain way, now that the two are coming together, you're adjusting to what that looks like.
Right. Yeah, the things that I have done and I've practiced doing all of my adult life, my single life, anytime before I got married, I've mastered those things, at least in my head.
Right.
I've mastered them and I do them right. I do them perfectly. I do the things
in your head, you do them
in my head. I do them right, and they should not be confronted. They should not be adjusted. Because what I'm doing, how I cook my meals and how I make ramen noodles or how I make my hot chocolate. Hot chocolate. I made my wife, I went to get her hot chocolate the other day, a couple weeks ago. And
Story time.
Yeah, story time. So I was getting the hot chocolate. I went into the store and I got it.
I love hot chocolate.
She doesn't like coffee, which I don't.
No.
Just pray for me.
No, it's a whole story, but we won't talk about it right now.
Okay, so she doesn't like coffee. So I got coffee. I got her hot chocolate. But I went to the hot chocolate machine, and they didn't have hot chocolate. So in the store, they have this machine that says hot chocolate, then they have some other names. So I was thinking what I was getting her was another flavor of hot chocolate, but it wasn't.
It's a hot chocolate machine with different flavors of hot chocolate. Go ahead.
Stop.
Go ahead.
So I got her, what did I get you? Cappuccino or something?
It was a cappuccino.
Yeah, I got her a cappuccino and
I was like, what is this?
Yeah, she was tasting it. She wasn't feeling it.
This is not hot chocolate.
She wasn't feeling that at all. No.
Because cappuccino
is not hot chocolate.
Has coffee
I got it. You've made your point.
Yes. And so go back to doing things.
So that exposed my wife because she was being mean to me because I tried my best to get her what she wanted.
No, I appreciated him making the effort.
Thanks.
It just wasn't the right thing. But anyway.
So, roles and expectations. So
roles and expectations.
You have these new roles, and it's hard to adjust to those new roles after you have in your mind, like I said before, perfected what you were doing before as a single person or before you got married. So making the adjustment can be really hard because, first of all, you don't think you need to make an adjustment.
No.
So if you don't think you need to change anything, you don't think you need to make an adjustment, why are we doing this?
Right.
And a lot of times that's the attitude that comes into a marriage. Like, why do I need to change anything? What I do is right. How I make my bed is the right way to make my bed because my grandmother showed me how to make a bed and she knows what you're talking about, my grandmom now. So it can spiral out of control when you are in this adjustment period trying to figure out what is my new role in this marriage. Right.
I would say the second thing that comes up is communication and conflict resolution.
Yeah.
That is another area of marriage in those first couple years where you just don't know how to do it right. And again, during the dating stage, you had some conflict here and there. But now that you're married, you're with each other every single day.
Right.
It looks so different.
Yeah, I think it's important to note how in the dating stage, when you had conflict, you had options to handle that conflict differently than you have when you get married.
Right.
Like when you're dating and there's conflict and you don't like what's happening, you can get in your car and go home.
Right.
Or you can say, get out.
Right.
Get out. You can say, get out. Like you don't have to go home, but you got to get out of here.
Right.
Like you need to leave.
Right.
So those are your options when you're single. I mean, there are other options where you just isolate yourself and say, hey, no, I don't really feel like hanging out today. I don't really feel like coming over today.
Right.
I just want to spend more time with my kids or my family.
Right.
So you go to your mom's house or your dad's house and kind of help out with a project or whatever. So when you're single, you have different ways to handle conflict. And you can, for the most part, avoid communication.
You can.
At least mature communication, you can avoid it.
Right. I agree. I mean, I would also add to that, there are always red flags.
Yeah.
Before you get married, if this person does not have a good and healthy way of communicating, there's red flags before you get there.
Agreed.
So for those who are dating and you're looking to get married, look out for the red flags because those are going to be indicators as far as like whether or not you're able to really navigate that because whatever you have established as a routine before you get married only becomes fortified, especially if it's unchecked once you get into the marriage.
Yeah. And if you are hiding something or if you're not really open about certain skill sets or things that you do well or don't do well, they will, going back to our first point, they'll be exposed.
Right, absolutely.
And that's what happens in the first couple of years of marriage. You're exposed for who you are. And we're not using the word exposed like it's a derogatory term.
Right.
But you're in a position now where the two are becoming one.
Right.
And in that process, you have to be willing to be vulnerable so they can see the real you.
Right.
If they see the real you, they can make adjustments and learn to love you for who you are.
Right. I think another word for exposed would be reveal.
Yeah.
It's being revealed. It's being brought to the light.
Sure.
And then the second part of that, we said communication was the conflict resolution. When it comes to communication, we've said it multiple times in previous episodes, just the importance of learning how to communicate. As children, we learn how to talk, but not communicate.
Right.
And so communication can look different from one person to another. And going back to your first point about how we get into the first one, we get into marriage and we think what we do is right. Just because you've been doing something for a long time doesn't mean that it's right.
Yeah.
But we don't think like that.
Say that again. Like that's real talk.
Right. We think that because I've been doing this so long, I've been doing it this way, it has worked for me, that it's right. And that's not necessarily the case.
And I 1000% agree. Just because you do it long enough doesn't mean it's right. And also, just because you are getting results that you consider successful doesn't mean that your partner considers those successful results.
Right.
Like, so you can do something and say, well, I'm nailing this. I'm killing this. Why do I need to change? And your spouse can look at you and say, that is the most ghetto thing I've ever seen in my life. Can you please stop doing that?
Why ghetto?
I'm just saying, like,
it's the first thing that came to mind.
It's the first thing that came to mind because, people have routines.
You're right.
People have routines in their lives that they think are 5-star.
Yeah.
But they are not necessarily 5-star routines.
That is true.
And when you marry someone, your 5-star will be exposed for a 1-star routine.
Real fast.
Really quickly.
In
like
that first
we're
year
gonna know. Yeah.
We're gonna know.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, number 3, loss of independence and personal space.
Yeah.
That is another reason that is hard in the first 1 to 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? We're used to having our own space, doing things our own way.
Yep.
We budget how we budget. We spend how we spend. We spend our time how we want to spend it. And now we're together all the time. My space is not my space. You're now in my space.
Right. Well, I feel like you talking to me.
I'm not. But I had a thought in my mind when I was saying this.
You did give me direct eye contact where you're like, we're together all the time.
No, we enjoy being together all the time.
We
do. But I was thinking about in our first house, when we first got married and we had to share that sink.
That's how
in
you
the
said
bathroom.
it.
And a sink is one sink.
It's a sink.
It's a sink.
Right. It's
a mirror,
one singular sink and a mirror.
Right. And I'd have like my makeup and all my hair stuff, and you're like trying to brush your hair, and you're like shaving, and I'm just like trying to, it was so hard. It's like we're getting tangled and bumping into each other.
Right, yeah.
But that was different. That was new. We had to adjust. And it's like, I'll just wait till you're done.
Right.
And then if you waited till I was done, you're like, oh my gosh, are we ever getting out of here? But that was an adjustment. I was used to doing whatever I wanted to do in my bathroom when I do my hair. Doing my hair. I was used to doing that.
Yeah, for sure.
And now it was different.
It was different. You would do something and I'd try to do something, and by the time you were done, I would wait. Like, let's say I would wait until you were finished. I would come in and I would get started. And then you come back in like, you're not done yet. I thought you were done. Like, you had your time. Right. This is my time now.
No. With a woman, we're never done.
Oh, man, I know.
We always have the right to come back. Right.
But that's the difficulty of space and independence and like how you handle your space was different when you were single versus how I handled my space when I was single. It's just different.
Right. So how would you answer this question? Why is losing independence such a threat to a husband or a wife? How would you answer that?
That's a good question. I think independence is a threat. Because
losing independence.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Losing independence is a threat to a husband or a wife because I think their identity is tied to what they do, when they do it, how they do it.
Okay.
I'm able to be who I want to be, when I want to be, and express myself however I would like to express myself. And that becomes challenged when you get married.
I think that's good. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
My wheels were turning. I like that. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I feel like we think we are more authentically ourselves when we are apart. But I think that there's something that happens, and I believe that I've seen it happen even in our marriage, where I can be authentically who I am with you because the strengths that I bring to the table and the strengths that you bring to the table, they come together and they mesh and we work together. But we think that our identity is tied in just who we are apart from each other.
Yeah.
But there's a strength in who we are.
Right.
And we don't see that until we're with somebody else.
I agree.
Because now my weaknesses show up and your strengths show up.
Right.
And it's just, I'm thinking about that. What you said, I think that's 100% true.
I agree. I also think that to your point, like we believe we're authentically who we are when we're apart. But I feel like that's like an entry level version of us.
Yeah.
You know, when iron sharpens iron, it creates a sharper version of that sword or whatever that thing is.
Right.
So it's like iron sharpening iron. That piece of iron has greater potential realized after it meets the other iron that sharpens it and causes friction.
Absolutely.
And it becomes more of what it was created to do. It does it better. It does it at a higher level, what it was created to do. Like the potential on the inside of them is developed through that friction.
Yeah.
And I believe that's what happens in marriage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's real good. I love that.
It is good.
I mean, how can you be a leader if no one's following you?
For sure.
You can't be a leader all by yourself, and you can't be a follower all by yourself. Like, who are you following? You know? And so in community, like that's one of the reasons why we, as church planners, we talk about community.
Yeah.
Who you are is really realized in this community, but the same is true in a family or in a marriage. Who you are is realized in that unit. Not while you're separate.
100% agree.
Man, that's so good.
We trim the fat
I love it.
when we're not. You know how I've said it multiple times in messages at the church, but when we first meet someone, we meet their representative.
Right.
Like that's not the real person. That's who they want you to think that they are.
Absolutely.
But when you come together, that mask has to come off.
Right.
It has to you got to be exposed. That mask has to come off, and it gives God an opportunity to work on you, to develop you, to strengthen you, to help you to grow, to help you to mature, so that you can fulfill His purpose in that marriage and also in your family and in the earth. All right, so you talked about how hard times happen to you.
Right.
Now we want to talk about how hard times happen because of you.
Yeah.
I found this quote online. I heard it before in some sort of leadership training. I did some research and I found it. It's by a Chinese philosopher, Laozi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but it's Laozi.
Okay.
And this is what he said, and I thought this was extremely interesting. He said, the soft and flexible will overcome the hard and stiff. When first born, we're small and weak. The living are soft and flexible. When we die, we become hard and stiff. The dead are rigid and unmoving. When I read that, it reminded me of how we are when we first get married.
Yeah.
There is a level of flexibility. We are willing to cater to our wife or our husband. We're willing to defer to them. We're willing to give allowances to them that we don't give to anyone else.
Yeah.
Like there's a level of flexibility and mobility in the relationship, in particular in the early years.
Okay.
But as time goes by, we can become more harsh, more inflexible. And I believe that one of the things that contributes to hard years, hard times, in marriage and why we're saying hard times can happen because of you is because we can find ourselves in a place where we are inflexible. We are unwilling to change. We are unwilling to move. And we are bent and stubborn on having things the way that we want to have things within our marriage. And I think that is a problem for many people. And you can enter into a season of hardness because of inflexibility.
Right. Wow. It's so true.
Yeah.
We don't adapt. We just become stiff. We become, like dead weight. Like, I'm not moving. I'm sitting here. I'm not moving. This is what I'm doing.
And instead of working through differences, we want to prove why we're right and how we're right. And we can spend the majority of our time flexing about our rightness. I told you so. I told you not to do that if you would have listened to me. And that becomes the mantra, the theme of the hard years. It's started by inflexibility, but it's fueled by this pride that just wants to say, I'm right and you're wrong and you always were wrong. And we want to beat it into our spouse.
Right.
It can really foster an environment that's unhealthy for so many in your family. So
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, in that position, you're creating emotional distance, as well as physical distance.
Right.
Resentment and tension and all those things arise in a marriage when there is that hardness that exists. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, inflexibility can destroy a marriage.
Absolutely.
And that's really the entryway into a hard season. Like, if you want to start a hard season, become inflexible.
Right.
Everything about every decision now is hard.
Yeah.
Because you have dismissed the idea of compromise. You have dismissed the idea, and your spouse has to come to where you are for every single decision. Everything. They have to come to where you are. So there's a couple points that we want to emphasize in this part. Again, we're talking about how, hard times, they can happen to you or they can happen because of you. One of the points that we want to talk about is just the communication breakdown. Like, when you're in a season of inflexibility, or when you have hardened your heart, you become stubborn, it breaks down communication. Oh, yeah. You're not willing to open your mouth and say honest things. You're only willing to open your mouth to say things that you have cherry picked. And because you've cherry picked through what you want to say, it can go either way, whether it's true, honest, or vulnerable. Right. It's just what you want to say in that time to prove your point many times. Right.
It's so many times it can be just so irrational.
Yeah.
You're not even making logical sense. Right. You're saying things, and it's like the other person has to submit to your will.
Right.
And you're just so irrational. You're reckless in your behavior. You're reckless in your words. Yeah. You're not getting the support and buy-in from your spouse because you are running the show.
Right, for sure.
It's horrible.
The second thing I'll say is that when you are inflexible, that it doesn't necessarily exclusively bring conflict, but it will escalate conflicts faster than anything else. Like, if you are inflexible and you are not willing to have a mutual, mature conversation, then it is going to escalate the problem. Right. Whatever the problem is, it will escalate it to the point where, like you said, stubbornness is irrational and it's reckless. And if you are stubborn and you're refusing to have a mature conversation with your spouse, that is going to come out. Right. It is going to come out in multiple ways, and it will escalate conflicts.
Right. The most simple conversation about where to eat dinner or what to buy at the grocery store becomes this, it could be a conflict. Like, no, you want to eat this? I don't want to eat that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes this escalated thing where it's like, you always want to do it. And it's like, whoa, I just said I don't want to eat Chinese tonight.
Right.
Like, it becomes escalated.
So when it becomes escalated, I think, and I'm going to ask you a question here, so prepare yourself.
All right.
When it becomes escalated in the mind of the husband or the wife, what is happening in their mind that they are choosing to dig in their heels and say, I am not going to meet you halfway anymore?
I would say there is there's some kind of anger, rage. It's not typically about whatever they're talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So like I said, in the example, they don't want to eat Chinese food tonight for dinner.
Right.
It has nothing to do with dinner. It has nothing to do with Chinese food. It has something to do with something else.
Right.
That has been living in their hearts for quite a while now. And they just feel the need that they have to stand their ground and dig in their heels. And so it's this fire that's been set ablaze, but it's been brewing under the surface for quite a while. And so I believe it's just this rage that's been building. And at some point it's going to set the whole thing on fire.
Yeah, I think like while you were talking, I was thinking about what you were saying, and I kept hearing the word resentment. Like there's some sort of resentment that's in there that over time has accumulated.
Yep.
And only thing you need are instances that you can recount in your mind.
Right.
And in your mind, you're thinking about, well, this happened the first time.
Right.
This happened last Wednesday. It is Friday. It happened twice today, so I know it's going to happen tomorrow.
Wow.
And you accumulate these thoughts in your mind, which equals resentment. So for the person who is bent on being inflexible and stubborn, somewhere in there is a level of resentment. And I'll add one other thing, fear. I think there's fear in the heart of the person in addition to maybe some resentment, but I think there's fear there because now their inflexibility is communicating, I am going to protect my own interest.
Right. Right.
I'm going to protect my interest in this marriage, and you are not going to take advantage of me any longer.
Right.
At that point, the marriage really starts to disintegrate and fall apart because the foundation is so weak. All right, the third thing that I want to bring up is how it can stunt your growth personally and relationally. If you are inflexible and you have no room for adaptability, it will cause you to stunt your growth personally and relationally, and that will eventually infuse the whole culture of your family.
Right.
It weakens the foundation of the family. The marriage is the foundation of the family. We've said that multiple times. For those of you who are married, for those of you who are single, the foundation of your family is you and your spiritual health and your emotional health. But for those of you who are married, like how the marriage goes, the family goes.
That's true.
And we don't want to minimize that or forget that. So we don't want your personal growth to be stunted or your relational growth to be stunted. So we'll talk about 2 action steps. I'll do the first one if you want to do the second one.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So the first action step is really to cultivate active listening and empathy. And how do you do this? The first thing you want to do is you want to keep Christ at the center of your marriage, and you want to invest in intentional quality time together. Like if you're not making time, you're going to constantly be divided.
Right.
When you come together and you communicate and you talk to one another and you try to work it out and there is effort in your communication.
Right.
You're not throwing words at each other, but there is effort in your communication, then you will start to see some semblance of unity. Keeping Christ at the center helps get your attitude right, helps align your mind and your thinking. But if you can invest in time together, make deliberate effort to listen deeply to your spouse.
Right.
Listen to what your wife is saying. Listen to what your husband is saying. Don't just brush it off like they always talking. Like listen to what they always talking. Listen to what they are saying and listen with active ears and a heart that is ready to respond.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let me read a scripture and then I'll let you do the second action step. James 1:19 says this. It says, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. So scripture gives us guidance in how we manage our tongue, right, and how we manage our emotions and how we manage our attitudes when it comes to our spouses.
Absolutely. Action step 2 would be embrace humility and adaptability. Mm-hmm. If we're not going to be humble, then it's just not going to work. Right. You got to be humble. Right. You have to submit. Right. It's not easy. It's unnatural, but that's the reason we have to do it.
Right.
We have to adopt that attitude and admit when we're wrong. We have to admit that we don't always know the answer. Yeah. And even if we do know the answer, we have to be willing to say, I could be wrong in my rightness. Right. Therefore, right, I'm going to adapt. I'm going to be flexible. Mm-hmm. There's a passage in Proverbs 11. Mm-hmm. When pride comes, then comes disgrace. But with the humble is wisdom. Mm-hmm. There is wisdom when we are humble. There is wisdom in being flexible and adapting. I think part of humility in this instance, because we may be talking to a husband and a wife who are like really struggling in a hard year of their marriage, and they're really going through it. And it's almost like they've gone so far in the opposite direction, they can't find their way back. Right. And for that couple, I mean, we want to encourage you, find help. Like there are people out there who are willing to help you and have conversations with you, who are willing to counsel you, who are willing to sit and listen to your side and hear the history of what you have going on in your family and in your marriage and pray for you. So we want to encourage you, if you find that the hard year that you are in was caused by you and you have been extremely inflexible, there is hope for you. You can find a path back to God and back to one another for restoration in your marriage. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this has been a really good episode. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Good.
Well, we want to thank you so much for joining us for the Beautifully Blended podcast. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, please share it, please comment. We love hearing from people in the comments. We really love and enjoy being along on this journey with you. Yeah. Until next time.